Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to get started in just one more minute. Just give a little chance for people to come back from the break, from that wonderful keynote we just had. And we're going to be covering today, talking a little bit about the Codings with Feelings unit that was developed in partnership with Computer Science for All New York City, the SEP Junior program, and the community group Sunset Spark, and how to incorporate content into other subject areas, even social emotional learning. So we're going to start in just a second. The link to today's slide deck is pinned at the top of the chat, so feel free to check that out. And within the slide deck itself is a link to the unit that we'll be covering. So. All right, well, let's get started because we only have an hour, and I want to make sure that there's an opportunity to share the resources and share the unit itself and the connections to computer science and social emotional learning, as well as field any questions. I will be monitoring the chat, so feel free to put any questions that you might have. If you yourself are working on similar projects around social emotional learning and computer science, also feel free to add those to the chat. The CS4NY Summit is a wonderful opportunity to share resources and learn what other people are doing. Yes, please do so. All right, so let's get started. Coding with Feelings. Coding with Feelings. So my name is Lionel Bergeron. I am the Director of Elementary School Computer Science Academics. I've been with New York City Public Schools for almost 21 years now. Started as a special ed middle school teacher in the Bronx, then worked for New York City Special Ed District as a technology coach before moving over to the Computer Science for All initiative in 2016. Now, the Computer Science for All initiative, it was one of DOE's, the Department of Ed, or New York City Public Schools Equity for Excellence initiatives, formed to support computer science education in New York City Public Schools. As I mentioned before, on this slide right here, the bit.ly is the link to today's slide deck, which is also pinned in the hop-in chat. So feel free to use that following the session. So just a little bit about Computer Science for All and what is CS for All and why we teach computer science in New York City. CS for All is a 10-year public-private partnership between the City of New York and private sector. It's designed to bring computer science education to every student in New York City public schools. The initiative aspires to give students meaningful computer science experiences, build on prior exposure and skills in all three grade levels, elementary, middle, and high school. So it's a comprehensive K-12 program. And as we develop and work towards post-initiative, we're also looking at how computer science impacts our students post-high school and even earlier than elementary, so pre-K, how we can support students in computer science and computational thinking there too. So it's a student pathway initiative that offers a number of programs focused on helping the K-12 school expand their students access to durable skills, including computational thinking and computer science skills. This is something that came with the chancellor and his expectations for our central programs to really support these durable skills. And our office is really aligned and designed to help support those skills related to computational thinking, computer science, and digital literacy. It's also, our mission is to ensure that all New York City public school students learn computer science with an emphasis on students who identify as girls, Black and Latinx students. And through our work, we'll be prepared to utilize computer science during K-12 experience and after graduation. So whether that's college or career readiness, really be able to apply those skills to computer science specific careers and or other careers, because as we all know, especially many of us here in this summit today, understand that computer science and understanding how computers work and computational thinking impacts all career choices and our personal interests in things that we'd like to do. So again, why do we teach computer science? I think this is a lot of preaching to the choir. Everybody here knows the expectations, but I think some of the real important things is to identify that students will learn computational thinking, problem solving, creativity, and critical thinking through the lens of computing. They'll also be able to collaborate and build relationships with peers, communicate and create with technologies, and better understand technologies we interact with daily. And this is a really vital and important part for elementary school, because they might not be thinking specifically around their careers or an understanding of what their options might be at this time in first or second grade. But we are helping them establish those important skill sets, so they will be successful, and it will help guide them into something in the future. Something that a project we recently were discussing, myself and Sunset Spark, was why not have a classroom role as a data scientist. We have line leader, or cleanup, or attendance keeper. Why not have somebody, one of the students, act as a data scientist in that role, understanding what elementary school is. And it's really important for us to really help students understand, and move past being passive consumers or just the users of technology, and be able to either use the technology more critically and an understanding of the impacts that technology is having, as well as begin creating technology to impact their communities, their jobs, or their lives in general. So through this philosophy and through these ideas, this is where the Coding with Feeling unit comes from. So it identifies social emotional learning content and activities that support the understanding of computer science and computational thinking concepts. So as many of us know, New York State approved computer science and digital fluency standards in 2018. By September of 2024, there's an expectation of full implementation. Now we're looking at anywhere from 31 to 34 standards in each of the grade bands, and we might not have the opportunity or the resources to teach them explicitly. So integration is a really powerful way of teaching computer science. Not only does it allow us to reach all those goals set by the standards, but it also gives an opportunity for students to see how computer science can be connected to other subject areas. And this particular unit looks at social emotional learning. So just a little background of the Coding with Feelings unit. It came from a partnership with a group here in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, called Sunset Spark. Galen Yadir, a wonderful team that have been bringing computer science to the schools in Sunset Spark and neighboring areas for over 15 years. And one of the things that they worked on with us in the SEP Junior program was they helped create this activity for our robots and robotics professional learning session. And what it did is it challenged the teachers, and then in turn challenged the students to program a robot to express a particular feeling using movement, colors, or whatever the robot was able to do, sounds, things like that, to express that particular feeling or emotion and see if others in the class could guess what it was. And from that idea really stemmed and built on that this idea, well, why not look at all of the aspects of social emotional learning and how they might connect. Here in New York City, we use, there's multiple social emotional learning curriculum and resources that are implemented by schools. Having over 1,600 schools in the city, there's diversity in what's actually being used. We use Sanford Harmony, which was introduced a couple of years ago, as well as the Ruler program, or you might know it as the Mood Meter. And so just to give you an idea, and some context related to what we might be using here and how it connects to computer science, because, we'll be using some of these examples in today's presentations. And it's actually really interesting because some of the social emotional learning curriculum, like Harmony, actually is starting to incorporate opportunities for digital citizenship, especially as it relates to our behaviors online. The ideas of bullying and being respectful is actually already incorporated into a lot of the social emotional learning curriculum. If you use Common Sense Media, they have a lot of wonderful digital citizenship, but it also addresses that social emotional learning aspect. And it's also important for us to tie in that this kind of work addresses that reaching for all thought process, through culturally responsive, or CRSE education, translanguaging and universal design for learning, which are, aspects and frameworks that we really work hard to apply here in New York City. So when thinking about CRSE framework integration, the framework provided by the state, we think about, how can we use computer science to develop a welcoming and affirming environment? Also to make sure that curriculum is inclusive, as well as the assessments, and then setting high expectations and rigorous instruction. And I think when we, sometimes the word rigor, gets mixed feelings or a lot of eye rolls, which is completely understandable because I don't really think that it's always conveyed in a way that's meaningful to teachers or students. And I think that the reason this ties into the coding with feelings is because the rigorous aspect of it and the setting the high expectation is for students to understand that the work that they create and the work that they do can impact others. And impacts of computing is an important part of our set of standards. And I think it adds value to the students, and it also adds value to the teachers when creating these things. You're not making something for the sake of making it. There's meaning behind it and there's value behind it. And I think that's really tied into that high expectation and rigorous instruction. So just to be clear, what is social emotional learning? This is provided by the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning. Social emotional learning, we think of it as the process through which children and adults understand and manage their emotions. Now, one of the things we'll kind of swap in between the words feelings and emotions. They're not specifically the same thing, but there's a lot of commonality with those two ways of describing it. So I might say feelings or emotions, but I'm using them interchangeably for today's presentation. And it also helps students to achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. I think sometimes we think about social emotional learning as how do we ourselves deal with emotions, but one of the key parts of this definition is that idea of empathy. And empathy builds beyond just social emotional learning. It builds, more successful, programs in computer science and things like that. So, also with this particular unit, we're going to look at some other content connections. So, there's the opportunity to use books, pictures, and videos on topics of feelings. Not only is this an opportunity to do read alouds and things like that, it's also to talk about other medias. And then there's often a point of reference for future activities. And there's opportunities for content integrations like reading comprehension and understanding things like perspective. All right, great. So we're going to jump right into the unit. If there's any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Any comments, again, any resources, again, today's slide deck is pinned at the top of the chat. So feel free to go to that. So the unit begins by exploring subconcepts such as decomposition, pattern recognition, and generalization, where students learn to analyze how we communicate feelings through different forms of expression. So you're taking these computational thinking practices and applying them to social emotional learning or an understanding of feelings. So I'm just going to throw a question out to the group participating today. So how do we express our feelings? What are some ways that you might think that we express our feelings? If you've looked at the slide deck already, you might know some where we're going with this, but just, offer some ideas in the chat. Like how would you express your feelings? What are some ways that you do that? Great. Thank you, Susan. Yes, body language, words, tears, smiles. As Tom mentioned, I had a bit of flooding this morning, so there was definitely some tears going on here. Body language and facial. Yes, definitely. Thank you, Simone. Anything else? Voice, silence, facial expressions, body language. Yes, definitely. Thank you, Pamela. It's really interesting for me because I journaling. Yes, absolutely. And Susan, we're actually going to address that in a little bit. And Jen, yes, art. How do we express our feelings? Yep. But as I mentioned, I have a 2.5-year-old, and it's really interesting how she's beginning to recognize feelings and emotions expressed in the book she's reading. So she'll look at somebody's face or currently a pumpkin's face as being like, that pumpkin's sad. And it just, it's incredible how at that age, they're beginning to identify feelings through things like facial expression. So great. Thank you for your sharing in the chat. So definitely. So there's different ways that we express our feelings. And what this unit begins with is using some of the resources available to us for, it's looking at K-5, but it is important to understand, especially with the projects, that a lot of this work can be applied all the way through 8th grade and even possibly in high school, depending on what computer science courses they might have had and like the projects that they create. But, some of the examples being, just to kind of introduce and kind of facilitate this discussion of like how we express our feelings using things like Inside Out movie, even just some of the clips from it. Sesame Street has an amazing set of resources connected to social emotional learning and teaching students about feelings. This particular video is a great example of kind of the question I just had, like, what feeling is that? And the video just kind of like the characters come in and express a feeling and they try to guess what it is. And it really helps to facilitate the beginning of that question. And it also helps you to understand, or students understand, that they're applying computational thinking. They're looking for patterns. They're breaking down the different, the voice, the face, the body language, and things like that. So as mentioned in the chat and suggested by some of you, facial expressions is one of the ways that we identify that. So you can take things, we do it through emojis, and using facial expression charts for social emotional learning. And we can use these things to help students start to recognize patterns and group them and generalize them and things like that. So we also have body language. There's a wonderful video that's tied into this lesson from Go Noodle called Body Language or Mood Walk, where the different actors, I can't think of their names right now, express particular emotions through the way that they're walking. And, like if you see in the picture all the way to the right, his hands are clenched, or his hands are wide open. So like those are demonstrating like wide open. I'm open to things right now. Oh, my hands are clenched. I'm closed off right now because I'm feeling vulnerable or I'm not feeling so great. So it's a really great way to, like, again, have students kind of break down different feelings. And so this is actually connected to things with body language. So actually having students with this mood walk observation sheet. So like when they do impatient, what did the students see? What did they hear? So we're talking about seeing the physicality of it or hearing the voices or the sounds we make. And then also having students maybe actually create a, what is it called? Pseudocode using these simple blocks, to fill in, like, when feeling this, I, am my blah, 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 set speed. So like they can actually create the body language using program, like pseudocode blocks. And these are just simple blocks pulled from Scratch to, create this particular algorithm. Also using things like words, sounds, and voice. And so having students, if you've ever seen or worked with Hello Ruby's activities, she has a universal remote control activity and then also code.org has an activity where, like you press a button and it's teaching if-then statements or conditionals. So like you press the circle and you say, ow, and you turn the dial and say, wow. You can do that specifically with, creating something similar to that, where, if I press the circle button to play when I'm happy, I press the circle. So it expresses like, yay, because I'm happy, or a square when I'm scared, or a triangle when I'm sleepy and yawning and things like that. So you can actually begin to have students think about conditionals, if-then statements. And it's also connected to so like, if I'm happy, I often, scream or, cheer. If I'm upset, I might cry. So like there's cause and effect there and an understanding of conditionals. And so one of the activities, as I mentioned before, is a sorting of the feelings, and so connections to abstraction subconcepts like decomposition, pattern recognition, evaluation. So one of those arrays of facial expressions, you have students split up into small groups or pairs, and then you ask them to sort the faces into 3 different groups or 2 different groups, or however many groups. You could just say split them into groups randomly, however many they want. But they need to be able to describe how they came up with the groupings, the 3 different groups. So we're going to do just kind of a little quick one right here. And this is a way to modify this activity for doing virtual learning, or for if you don't have the array in front of them, you can cut them up. There's different approaches to it, especially with the grade levels that you're at. Sometimes it's better if the students, even just holding a piece of paper, they make a different connection to it. So I'm going to ask you, you don't have to come up with the 3 different groups, but think of one grouping of these particular facial expressions, and how you might describe how you came up with that one. So like you might say like 4, 5, and 6 are all fussy. And I came up with that because of their, the way that their mouths are shaped. So just something like that. Take a quick look. We'll take 60 seconds to do this. And come up with one grouping and list it in the chat. Just give the numbers, what that group might be described as. So. Great. Yeah, definitely 1 and 7 are happy or pleased. That's a really great feelings emotion word, pleased. Five, 8, 9 are disconnected. Did you intentionally put disconnected as disconnected? That's a great visual representation of that word. Yes, nice. Happy accidents are wonderful. So 2, 4, and 6 would be flooding for me. So all right, take like 10 more seconds, and if anyone else wants to add in their grouping. But as we're doing this and just waiting to see if anyone else would like to share, 3 and 9 are confused. Yeah, great. So when thinking about this, looking at this, like, how did you make that decision? Did you recognize, did you break it down into eyes and mouth? And then, okay, all the eyes look this way and all the mouths look this way. So you're doing elements of decomposition. You're doing pattern recognition. You're also doing generalization, because there's 3 different things that might have 3 different expressions. 8 is sick, 4 is frustrated, and they're connected to each other. Great. And so what you're ended up doing here is you're doing computational thinking. There are also other ways to do this too. Just as a recommendation, we talked about this through either remote learning. If you have smart boards, things like that, having students come up and they might just circle the ones that look similar or connected to each other, and then having a discussion with them on how they're connected with each other. And from this, students can actually begin to build their feelings or social emotional vocabulary. They use feeling words to label facial expressions to help build emotional literacy. It also, because you can do this with vocabulary words as well. So if you're thinking of older students, you might not use the facial recognitions right away. Maybe you just use the words themselves and have the students group them and then to create their own, something like that. Also, when considering CRSE and integration, like what's the approach that we use? So you have arrays like this, which are definitely similar to emojis, but actually using emojis, and that connects to our students because our students communicate through emojis, and it's some of the language in which they present their thoughts and ideas. And so also like using different boards that use different languages to help share that, to get an understanding of like what that word might mean in Spanish, or what the Spanish word for that particular feeling might be. Also, one of the fun things to do within this particular unit is based off of that grouping, what students can think about. Can you think of a different emotion or a feeling that fits into one of your groupings, and start by trying to draw a facial expression for that feeling and share with the class to see if they can guess what it makes. This activity comes from is similar to a Hello Ruby activity from her emoji storytelling. But you can use simple things and like have them bring in eyes and a mouth, or a third part of it. There's also what we'll look at in a little bit. There's You can create your own emoji, and I don't have the link in this particular slide deck, but if anybody knows it, just put it in the chat. But students create their own emoji to express that particular feeling, because then again it's connected to that cultural aspect of their own lives, using emojis. But they might come up with excited. Okay, what does excited look like? Does it fit into like the happy group? Something like that. So again, now you're also using a representation of automation. So you're identifying a pattern. You're using decomposition to identify a pattern to generalize a particular set of feelings, and then you're using that pattern to create a new one to fit into that grouping. And so it's a demonstration of automation. Again, some of these activities are come from a variation of something from Hello Ruby. If you don't know the Hello Ruby books, they're wonderful. An amazing author, Linda Lucas, has a series of books, but she also has on the HelloRuby.com website a number of amazing activities for teaching computer science in general. But she often connects it to the culture of young students, and like one of them being emojis. So what ends up happening is that now students will then learn how to apply that algorithm and programming to create a computing artifact that models a specific or feeling or emotion. So now we have taken, a series of different activities where students, use computational thinking related to the ways we express our feelings. So through facial expressions, the sounds we make, our body language, different things like that. And now they're going to apply that process and that the aspects of social emotional learning that they use to create a particular artifact. Now there's a lot of amazing programs out there and content and curriculum that you can use for this. Platforms, one of the really great one is CodeSpark, which is demonstrated right here. In their storytelling aspect, you can actually program specific facial expressions. So it's again tied into the work that we just covered, to apply to the different sprites or characters that they have within the stories. When thinking about this particular unit, we tried to a universal design for learning approach. So we want students to choose the feeling and how they want to express it, right? We want students to choose what platform they want to use to create the expression, and the teacher is there to support the CS content learning. Now, with elementary school students, or in a classroom in general, if you have 30 students, you don't want 30 different platforms being used, because it's just not manageable. So you might create, an array or a set of selected platforms, or platforms that you previously used to teach computational thinking or computer science. So like you might say, okay, you can use Scratch, Code.org, or Wonder Workshop with the Dash and Dot robots. Those are your three options. But you still want students to have some kind of autonomy and choice in how they want to express their particular feelings. And so students choose that particular feeling. They connect it to the lessons ahead previously discussed in the unit. Excited. It's a big smile. It's jumping up and down. It's woohoo. And then they think about, okay, well, how can I express those things? Yes, that was CodeSpark. Yes, that I mentioned, Simone. So this particular one, this is CodeSpark. Yep. And CodeSpark is free for public school teachers, just so you know that. And so again, how do I create big smiles in computer science or the platform that I'm using? How do I, simulate jumping up and down? How do I make the sounds woohoo or other sounds that might demonstrate a feeling of excitement? And so again, you go in and you look at the different platforms. So again, here you might say, here are 4 different platforms you can choose from as a student, and I'm going to support your learning with that. And so the way that it works is that, let's say a student wants to use Scratch, right? And so you help the students make the connection using the Scratch platform to maybe the tutorials that are available. So again, how do I animate a sprite? Okay, that'll help me understand how to move a sprite jumping up and down. How do I add a sound or record a sound? Okay, then I can record myself going woohoo, hide and show, which again, that's more animation. But maybe you as the teacher might go in and say, okay, this is how you can go in and edit your sprite in Scratch. So as a teacher, you're helping the students meet the goals that they set for themselves within the platform. Now, of course, you as a teacher have to have some understanding of the platforms that they will be using, but also something that I often talk to my teachers in general around computer science is that if you're not sure, that's okay. If you're not sure that a platform won't do what a student wants it to do, don't tell them no. If you know it won't do it, say, okay, yeah, the microbit version 1, we have those. We can't make sound with them because it doesn't have a speaker. But we do have the version 2, so let's make sure we use the version 2. But don't dismiss something because your lack of experience with it. It's a wonderful opportunity to explore a platform to see what it can do, because many of these platforms go above and beyond what their original intent. And Scratch is an amazing example of that's why Scratch can be used from 6-year-olds to like 69-year-olds, 80-year-olds, 110-year-olds. Like anybody can use Scratch to create amazing, wonderful projects. And then you ask the students to make a plan. And so this is that design thinking, something we do in New York City, which I think was mentioned earlier in CS for NY, is the blueprint. The blueprint focuses on 3 main pillars, one of them being the perspective, that being like an explorer, creator, innovator, and citizen. And that's just the approach you take often with elementary and middle school. It's explorer, creator. But then we take our concepts and then we also take our practices. Now, the practices are analyze, prototype, and communicate. And so that design thinking is very important. And this, again, connects to other subject areas around, science and engineering and things like that. And this is also where your curriculum from your social emotional learning content for your school district comes into play. The page on the left there is Sanford Harmony. I've done this with my middle school students, just like expressing themselves through kind of like an outline of a body and what do they want to put into it, or something graphic organizer more specifically saying what's the feeling that I want to express. And then you make a plan. This is a simple, just, charting it out type of expression, draw or write about it, express it with computer science. So my facial expression is big smile, wide eyes. Okay, so in my computer science platform, I can add a big smile sprite, animate a sprite face to have a big smile and wide eyes. So it could go from smile to big smile or small eyes to big eyes, like, oh, so excited. And this is still the planning. And it also has students understand that sometimes they want the program to do something and they just can't figure it out, and that's okay. And then from there, they go express it with code. What can I do in the actual platform? And then the questions that I need to know. What do I need to know? And this has the students asking the teachers, okay, I need to know how to import a sprite, versus you preload and be like, this is how you import a sprite. They tell you what their needs are, and you as a teacher and your understanding of the platforms in computer science, you help them reach those expectations. And it's so tied into UDL, CRSE, just like empowering the students themselves. And you also might use larger tutorials that address a lot of these things. So things like animated name, you can use animated name, but you can also do animated a feeling, right? So they could follow the CS first tutorial or the Scratch tutorial for animated name, but instead of animating a name, we're going to animate a feelings word. Or 5 random facts. I really love this project. I've done it so many times with students. 5 random facts about me. So 5 random facts about, being sad, or 5 random facts about being happy, 5 random facts about whatever. It gives them a little more structure if you need it, because sometimes you do need the structure. If something's too open-ended, the students might struggle. Also, from a teacher's perspective, if this is the first time you're doing it, you might want to start structured, and as you learn to do it more and more, provide a little more freedom or flexibility with the students. From this particular unit and this particular activity, I participate in something called the Scratch Education Collaborative, and we had the wonderful opportunity to sit in on a presentation from the Exploratorium in San Francisco, and they had this thing called the Tinkering Studio, and they demonstrated something called making faces. I won't get specifically into it, but it was basically stop animation to create facial expressions using simple items around the house. So this is one that I did, and then I just animated in Scratch Junior, and you can do it specifically for a feeling or emotion. So here's angry and happy, and this is just little some of these are just little bottle tops to the pouches for my daughter. There's a little wrench in the middle. There's a dental floss and some random pieces of string and stuff. And using that, and I think this activity is connected in the slide deck. If not, I'll connect it to the actual larger activity that you can do. And that's also something wonderful about this unit too. You don't have to do every lesson. You don't have to do every, there's 2 main projects, but there's smaller projects built into it too. So here's an example too of just doing this simply with Scratch. And so if I click on this, so you can see it, I'm going to large screen. So press the space bar to see the expression of love. Okay, so I'm using random items. So this is a simulation, random items pulled from the sprite library. And I'm going to hit play or hit the green flag. And now if eyes and things like that. So there's different ways that you can incorporate the functionality of different platforms. But that making faces one is great. As I mentioned before, CodeSpark has something where they can plan it out, make your own foo. So you can say, my foo is angry, my foo is excited, my foo is sleepy. And now you can actually go in and create your foos and the characters themselves within the CodeSpark platform. And they have specific blocks for those particular emotions. Also, CodeSpark has a wonderful chart. How are you feeling today? And it has a glitch in expressing different feelings. Again, this is the interchangeability of the social emotional learning content with our computer science. So even if it starts with something simple as like having a feelings chart, but it's using the sprites from CodeSpark, that's beginning that integration of content and understanding. And then going into actually create a story using those particular blocks. Microbit, you can then incorporate things, the physical computing aspect of it, Makey, Microbit, Arduino, the Circuit Playground, any of those things allow for a lot of these expressing feelings or emotion. There's also the Microbit Foundation has something called a motion badge project, where just pressing the different buttons helps express a particular emotion or feeling. And it can be done in early elementary. Scratch Junior has dance party. So that's movement, right? And then meet and greet. So that's speaking, but you're using maybe just dialogue boxes. A meet and greet can be, talking about your feelings or like expressing your feelings through dance. Somebody put art, we express feeling through art. We express the feelings through dance. We have an emotional connection to when we see dancing, right? Most dancing. And so these are some student projects that I just want to share with you. So this particular one, now this one incorporates that animate your name, but with the feeling aspect. So it said, "I love my family and we love you." So he was expressing his concept of love related to that, as well as animating his name. And then there's this one. Music in the background. So that's the first half of this particular unit, and it kind of culminates with the first summative project. Does anybody have any questions about that at this point? before we just move on to the second. I know we have about 18 minutes left, so I want to make sure. Our school system is working on that with Scratch, and it's still up in the air. One of the bigger challenges with Scratch is their community board sharing. So you can still do this with their downloadable version. So you can download Scratch directly to a computer, and then it keeps everything local. The other recommendation that we have also been receiving is using CS First. Because when you create Scratch accounts through CS First, the Google platform, it's self-contained. They don't have access. They can't share the projects created in CS First to the community of Scratch in general. So that's one of the recommendations that we've received. Okay. Again, feel free to add any questions that you might have in the chat. In the second part of the unit, students begin to analyze different strategies. So the first part is talking about expressing the feelings and emotions and how do we do that. And then the second part is the strategies that we use to help manage or regulate the different feelings that we have. Now, one of the things that I do want to talk about, sometimes this idea of regulating or managing is seen as a negative. Now, because it's often applied to like, how do we stop a student from being angry? We should never stop a student from being angry. We should always help a student understand why they're angry and bring them back to a place where it's not hurting themselves, and so that they can address that particular thing. I don't mean managing behaviors like that, because it's also an element, thinking as a classroom teacher, I always, especially when I first started teaching, that group of students that come in after lunch or after recess or after physical education, they're hyped up, they're excited, they're just pumped up, they're just full of energy. And I need them to just bring it down a little bit, because I need them to sit at a computer desk, something like that. So how do I help them regulate and manage those things to achieve the goals that they need to achieve in the time that they need to achieve it? So if somebody's angry, you want them to help manage them and regulate that particular feeling so they can address that, what made them angry, and how they can move past feeling angry. Again, as we mentioned, as I mentioned before, we use the mood meter, and this is a great representation of that, where, there's 4 quadrants that are kind of explained in the idea of level of pleasantness or energy: high energy, unpleasant, or high energy, very pleasant; low energy, pleasant; low energy, unpleasant, and where you feel on that spectrum. And something else to think about too is that throughout a 45-minute class period, or this 45-minute presentation that I've been given, you might be fluctuating between certain things, right? So like if you're feeling a little bored, hopefully not, you might stand up, or tired, you might stand up to watch the rest of this presentation. Or if you are bored, you're clicking on the links in the slide deck to re-engage yourself with this. Or you might put in the chat like, Lionel, you got to pump it up a little bit, I'm falling asleep here, something like that. So again, it's important to think about when managing or regulating our behaviors or our feelings, that it's connected to, it's constant, right? Sometimes we need more drastic changes, and sometimes we just need more subtle changes. Think about, if you have an Apple Watch, that breathing thing that just pops up, like, all right, it's time to breathe. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's breathe. Or like, it's time to stand up. That's just something subtle to kind of like help, keep your energy level up. One example, again, that I use is Go Noodle. They have some wonderful brain breaks, which are like stretching or breathing exercises that you can use in the classroom. And so we use these sometimes to help our students regulate or manage how they're feeling. So again, like the Bee Breath one is a great one for students that come in all hyped up and excited from gym class or from lunch, or they just had a special guest during assembly, something like that. All right, let's take a breath and let's recenter ourselves and refocus ourselves on the work that need to be done in the classroom. And so what you're thinking about is students will then create a computing artifact that can be used to either demonstrate or support a selected strategy. So keeping along the lines with the emojis, and this is also again connected to some of the work from Hello Ruby. So in this activity, you're going to create a story using emojis to describe a situation where you use this strategy to help manage how you were feeling. So this is one of the lessons that helps build up to that final artifact project. So we think about emojis like faces, weather, food, animals, and activity we use in text message, emails, or online. Emojis are a way we share our feelings and like to show humor or affection in our messages, and it's also turned into its own creative language of our own. So if we think about teaching about computer science or using a different language to express ideas, emojis is kind of a way to like compare that to. So quick question, how would you break down this particular emoji story? So what do you think this emoji story is about? If you look at the progression from the first one all the way through the end, what do you think this is kind of describing? How would you describe this in words? And go ahead and add it in the text or in the chat. Any ideas? Teacher ready to teach. The kid is uncertain. Yeah. And so so the teacher's ready to teach something, the kid is uncertain. Oh, the computer's not working. Okay. So what does the student do when he's uncertain or the student's uncertain? Great. Yeah. Thank you, Jen. Yeah, the student asks for help. Ask for help, right? So that's something that's a simple strategy. So the teacher's beginning to teach something, the student's uncertain, doesn't know what the teacher's talking about, feels upset, sad about it. The simple strategy of asking a question, clarifying question. The teacher tries to help the student, and then the student goes to work and is happier about it. Okay, something simple like that, and asking students to kind of come up with their own emoji story. And so think of a time when you needed to manage how you were feeling, maybe bringing a little calm after an intense workout or getting energized after a large meal. Using the emoji story planning template, identify what caused the feeling and how you were feeling. And then next, identify a strategy or something you did to manage the feeling and how you felt after using it. Now, I don't, and I was going to try to have to do this here in the chat, but I don't think, yeah, the emojis are somewhat limited in the chat. So I'm just going to give you some examples of what that might look like. And also, this is a great website to use. I'll put it in the chat just so you have it. And I'll show it to you really quickly. Copy. And so emoji copy is great, especially if you are using a desktop where you might not have access to it. So you can search for specific emojis, but I can go down here and I can select the different emojis, and it's actually creating the progression right here at the top, right? And then I can copy and paste this into a document, into a chat, into whatever platform that you're using. So just a heads up, this is a great platform for creating these emoji stories if you don't have emojis available on the actual keyboard that students are using. But here's another example, and this is something simple. When it's cloudy, I get sad. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Dana, for sharing that. Yeah. For Windows, key plus the period key pulls up the emoji keyboard. Great. So here's another example when it's cloudy. This was from a teacher that did it. They feel sad, but as the sun comes out, they go out and get some sunshine and they feel happy. So it's something as simple as like going outside and getting a little sunshine. When I'm a little tired, I put on, oh, I forget what this one was about. Think of a time when you need to manage it. Oh, what was this one? Oh, when I'm tired and there's a lot loud music, I get upset. So I ask to be quiet, and then, or I look for quiet, and then I get some sleep. Yes, thank you. Couldn't sleep. Again, using something similar to as our previous diagrams, just a simple planning sheet. Write or draw about it. What emoji can you use to express it? We always include the write or draw about it for our students because they might not always know the words to use, but they can also draw them. That's the approach of like UDL, making sure that students have multiple ways of expressing their ideas. So, what caused the feeling? What did it? How did it make you feel? What strategy did you use to change it? How did you feel after using that strategy? Again, you know, somebody created this one right around COVID. So when I'm sick, I have to stay home. But if I get a vaccine, then I can either go to a sporting event or listen to live music, which makes me happy. So now, again, they're addressing that students begin to apply the sub-concepts of abstraction by using decomposition, modularity, and interfaces. Students can learn to create more complex and interactive programs. So some of the unit project examples are Can You Guess Who Is Mad? Or Let's Count to 10. So again, this is the one on the left. Can you guess who is mad? Is help students understand or like help teach an understanding of expressing feelings. And then the one on the right is really meant to help people who are managing it. So they need to calm down or take a break. And these are just, basic projects. Oh, I thought they were linked. Hold on. Oh, no, neither of them linked. I'll make sure I can link them so that way when you have them in the slide deck. Using the same universal design for learning approach, they choose the strategy and how they want to demonstrate it. Students choose what platform they want to use, again, with restrictions based off of availability, your own understanding, time constraints, things like that. But you want to have some choice for students. It also allows students who feel more comfortable on one platform than a bit more comfortable on one platform than another. And then again, the teacher's role is to support the content learning. So students choose a strategy on how they want to demonstrate. So I want to count to 10. So I want it to be interactive. I want it to have calming music. And I also want an element of encouragement to it. They choose the platform that they want. And then they look at the platform. So if we stick with Scratch as an example, those things I can use the music blocks, right? I can also begin to use the video sensing. So if I want movement in it, or the pen to draw the sprites. So here's another example connected to the mood meter. This is a wonderful chart, displays the 4 zones. Choose a zone by clicking on it, and then go to the next screen after clicking. And so like this is somewhat interactive, but how can students apply prototyping? What would it look like using computer science? So maybe they create a version of this in Scratch, right? But then now I want to apply it because I wanted to use the sensing, right? So they create a prototype, but then they want to enhance it. In this particular one, the hand movements, I can move my hands into the different blocks. Now, I think I didn't link it because there's something wrong with my code, or my computer's camera wasn't working correctly. It wasn't working, but if you touch the particular block, it moves to that particular one, or identifies that particular one, how you're feeling. And then what it does is then it gives you a set of feelings words or strategies for when you're feeling that way. You can also incorporate the aspect of physical computing, so or other ways of addressing it. I think the translate one is a wonderful way. If we talked that early emoji screen where it gave you feelings and emotions in Spanish and English, the translation, because that might be a barrier for not understanding how somebody's feeling. They might be telling you, I'm angry, but in another language that you don't know. And so the translation just is that in itself. Having somebody understand how you're feeling is a wonderful way to manage your feelings, and it helps you manage it, right? And then the Makey has some wonderful apps to it, as well as the Microbit. And so here's an example of one that I created using the Makey. So I'll just show you this real quick. So scroll down here, you'll see that the red is pleasant, yellow, and it describes the mood meter. And so if I go here, now these are the arrows. So if I, oop, I gotta hit the flag. So, that's blue, and it keeps track. And so you can use this project in your classroom to keep track of like where people are in the mood meter. And so what we can do here is then I created these simple, just using boxes and this aluminum foil that's used for candy wrapping, which actually comes in the colors because coloring aluminum foil or tin foil can be a pain in the butt. So these are just candy wrappers that I, lightly glued to the top of these boxes that had a little bit of like curve to it, which felt like a button. And so you use these as a way of like connected to that particular mood meter. And so one of the students' projects, keeping myself busy. So this was during COVID too. This was a student's project. Just just a simple project of like keeping yourself busy. Also, with the new new aspects of artificial intelligence, machine learning, you have things like the teachable machine, where you have images, so like facial recognition, talking about that, like facial recognition and the the impacts of facial recognition to the, like, can a computer recognize when somebody's happy? What kind of data set would you need for it to be more accurate? Audio projects, like what does a happy cheer sound like, or poses, so like body positions, things like that. So all those things that we talked about before, maybe to support somebody's understanding of social emotional learning. Also, we're looking to expand the unit to add additional content around causes for how we feel. So connected to the activities, the CS concepts of data and racial literacy to the CS practices, adding a third unit project around digital storytelling. So what are the things that impact how we feel? And so like one of the things that came up, especially during COVID and some of the protesting and things like that, like how students were reacting to those and how it made them feel. And so students were creating projects to express that idea too. So it ends up being, what are the feelings like? How do we manage those feelings? And then how do we really investigate and develop a better understanding of what makes us feel the way we do? So that's the unit. 1 minute left for questions. If anybody has any questions, again, that's the link, the short link to the slide deck. The unit overviews in there. I'll add some additional links that we're missing over the next day or two. Feel free to email me. That's my contact information, as well as my social media handles, as well as SEP Junior, which is the program that I facilitate. Does anybody have any questions before we break and transition to the final keynote? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much again, and I really appreciate your participation and attention. And again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions regarding any of this content. So, have a wonderful weekend. For those of you in New York City, please stay dry. It's supposed to rain all the way through till tomorrow. So, good luck, everybody, and hope to hear from you soon.